Hey guys, welcome back to CyberSecurityTV. This is episode 4 of the Unvalidated Redirect Vulnerability. In this episode, we're gonna take a look at the hashing techniques that the developer generally use to avoid the redirect vulnerability, and as a pen tester, what you can do to bypass it, or maybe also find the vulnerabilities in the implementation of this hashing functionality. Now, just so you know, hashes are one way, so it's not like you can unhash the things. This is very generic interview questions that people would generally ask if you're going for any security position. So that's a difference, the main difference between the encryption and hashing, where the encryption is you can decrypt and hashing you cannot. Now, the how the developer usually do that is they generally have a redirect URL where they want to redirect user to xyz.com, and then along with that they also calculate the hash, and they maybe store it on the server side, maybe in the database, or maybe they have a whitelist number of hashes, so they match against it. If the match is there, they would allow the user to uh, redirect, or application to redirect. Otherwise they will just maybe stop the operation or something. So this is how the general hashing functionality work. Now, to give some more extent or give better understanding, let's jump onto our VM to see how it actually works. Alright, so this is our VM, and this is the page we have for this demonstration. Now, you can ignore all this portion. I will talk about it later in the video, but yeah, right now you can just just pay attention to this particular URL or particular line where we have been. It's just pretty much same thing what we have done in the previous videos as well. So for example, if you mouse over this one, on the left hand corner you would be able to see the URL, which is redirected URL, and then some random values. Now if you click on this, it's gonna redirect us to the our cybersecurity Facebook page, where we post our usual updates. If you guys haven't are not following it, please do so. So let's copy this URL and see. Right, so here we can see there is a URL which is facebook.com, and then there is a random value. Now in the previous videos, what we have been doing is we can just change this value in the simplest example, I guess, in the episode 1, and we can copy this and try to paste here, right? And now we get the invalid redirect URL, and the reason being is this google.com, there is a certain value associated with that which is being checked on the server side, and since we are not providing that value, we are not able to pass through this. So what we can do here is, there are so many available options in terms of all this hash algorithm that you see. Now for first, at the first sight you might not be able to notice whether this just a random value, or this encrypted value, or URL encoding, or maybe hashing. So that's why you might have to pay a lot of attention to, and maybe you have to do trial and error. But of course, if you spend enough time, you'll be able to figure out whether this is a hashing or what kind of value it is, the encoding that we saw in the, or base64 encoding that we saw in the previous video. Another thing to note, this name of the parameter might not be the same in the application that you are testing, so make sure you pay attention to all the URLs as well. Now, since we know this is a hashing technique that the developer has used, our first task is going to be figuring out what type of hashing they have used. So simply, that's why I've created this small sort of like a echo code where it lists out all the supported hashing technique for the PHP. Now of course it would be very tedious and time consuming to go and check, convert our URL to this each of this algorithm and compare. So what I've also done is, for example, if we go here, right, let's just duplicate this page, and then So this is a small script I have written where if you provide any URL, so in our example, let me copy this again and let's copy this and I guess here, right? So it's gonna give you hash list for all the hashing function. Now, this is actually a good script to have for all the programming languages that you'd be testing as a pen tester. So whenever you need it, you can just use that one to generate the hashing. Now, in our example, let's see, our hash starts with the 6A80, right? So here, if we see MD5, it starts with the 6A80 and last four is 6985, which is this. That way we know, okay, this is the hash value of this particular URL. That's why we are able to redirect, and that's how the developer is checking. So now if the as being a attacker or the pen tester, if you want to redirect a user to google.com, just generate the hash list, right? And then copy out this hash value, replace it with this, and of course you need to change the URL for which you have generated the hash. Now let's go here and try the same thing again, and let's see. Alright, so now we got redirected, right? And the reason was because we provided the right hash value for the correct URL. Now one thing to note, the hashing is case sensitive. So for example, if I type G capital, it's not gonna work because then the hash value changes, right? In this case, we took a simpler example. We'll also talk about some advanced hashing technique in the next episode, like salting with the hashing and all those things. Don't worry if you don't know about that right now, but yeah, that's something we'll discuss as well. Now you can also we can also play around by changing the script. So for example, instead of MD5 we can use SHA 384 256 or something, and then try to manipulate the things. The only thing in the real world example is you don't know what the hashing techniques they have used. So if you are doing a white box testing or something, maybe that's going to be super helpful because you know exactly, you have the access to the source code. But if not, then you may have to spend a ton of time to figuring out what's the hashing technique that they've used and how do we bypass it. Now let's go back to our presentation and give you some penetration test tips. So when you are doing actual penetration testing, what are the things you need to take care of, or maybe make sure. So the first thing is, as we saw in our example, the parameter name was random and it was easily visible, and also the value of it, right? So for example, if you instead of MD5, if someone is using SHA-512, then the value of the parameter would be much longer, almost twice or thrice of the MD5. So there are some visible difference where you can figure out what kind of hashing technique that the developer has used. And of course, most of the industry standard algorithms are either MD5, SHA, those are the ones that the developer is going to use. So if you are just doing a blind or black box testing, then probably that's the one something you want to start focusing on. But be sure to review all the parameters that you have in the URL as well as in the post method, because you don't know which one of that is the real random values or hash values that they are using for the validation. Now another thing, as I show you, showed you that the hash.php page, which would generate hashes for all the given URL, that we have done just for the PHP, but of course you can also do create for other programming languages. There are also tons of tools online available. So instead, if you do not want to create the script, that's fine too. But I just find it easier that you have the script, so you can just keep it in your toolbox and run it whenever you come across such applications. So if I have a Java application and then I have a JavaScript as well, I just run it and compare the hashes. That's just easier for me. So those are a couple of tips when you are doing such pen testing for the redirect vulnerability. I think that's about it. I hope you guys have fun watching this video. If you do like it, please hit the like button below the video, and also leave the comments or any questions that you may have. And feel free to follow the Facebook page to get the more updates. Thank you so much.